Hello and welcome to today's livecast. I'm Jamey with Stonemaier Games, and it is Wednesday, June 25th. I am excited to spend the next hour with you today on a very hot day in St. Louis. Hot, humid. Hopefully it is a little cooler where you are right now. As usual, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I have a few topics that I'll cover today, including some of the ones that I mentioned in the subject line. Vantage content. Let's start with that because this week has largely been about Vantage so far. This is my upcoming open world cooperative game, non-campaign game, just a game where you crash on the planet, you play a game, you pack everything back up, and then you play again whenever you want. The reviews and playthroughs content from various content creators started to go live on Friday, and we've seen a few come out since then. I think there are others that are planned in the coming weeks and leading up to the July 9th launch on our web store. I haven't completely officially announced that date yet because there are still precarious things that can happen with freight shipping between now and then, but that's what we're looking at right now, a July 9th launch on the Stonemaier Games web store, and that is worldwide. That's our web store in the US, Australia, Canada, and in Europe. So I'm very excited about that. Also, I posted today on Blue Sky and on Instagram that I've been answering so many questions about Vantage, which I love. I love getting questions about Vantage. I'm happy to answer anything about it. Especially I've done an Ask Me Anything on Board Game Geek recently that I've really got. I had the itch to play. Like I always want to play Vantage, but I sometimes feel a little guilty, like I should be working because I probably should be working. But yesterday I just couldn't get enough of that itch. So Megan and I sat down and dropped down in the world and explored Vantage for a while, and it was delightful to do that. So I look forward to you all having Vantage so you can do that whenever you have the itch to explore this planet and learn a little bit more and just do whatever you want, live another life on this planet for an hour or so. I'm really excited for you to go on those adventures. Let's see. Carlos says, I did notice that Nicole just got back from a camping trip. Nicole, hopefully it wasn't as hot as it is in St. Louis right now, wherever you were camping. Carlos says, congrats on the reviews of Vantage. I love the Easter eggs in Tapestry where that reference other Stonemaier games. Without spoilers, are there similar nods to past games in Vantage? It's a good question, Carlos. There are certainly Easter eggs in Vantage. I'm trying to think if there's any. I know that there were attempts by some of the people who are helping to edit Vantage to add Easter eggs to the game. But I didn't want to get too self-referential. Sometimes I think I crossed that boundary a little bit and maybe go a little bit too meta, a little bit too self-referential. So while there are references to things, to Easter egg type things, I don't know if there are too many references to Stonemaier Games. At least if there was ever a suggestion to do that just went a little bit too out of the way, in my opinion, I didn't include it in the final text. These were edits, well-intentioned edits made by some of the people helping to edit the Vantage rulebooks and storybooks. Carol says, do you have your games packed for traveling? So Carol's referring to a cruise that I'm going on in the near future. It is a gaming cruise, and they'll actually have games on the cruise, Carol. So I haven't decided exactly what I'm taking yet. I'll probably try to fit a few games into a small box, so I have that handy. When I went to Japan, I think I used the Flip 7 box to pack Flip 7, Tranquility, the Ascent, or the new one, and the Gang. And all of them fit into a fairly small box. I was glad to have done that. So we'll see about that. But there will be a lot of games on this cruise ship. So because it is a gaming cruise. So I don't know how many games I'll actually pack. Garrett says, have you considered doing any more videos or even live cast of Vantage playthroughs? Garrett, it is quite possible I will do it. I have found for me personally that I get the most enjoyment for Vantage when I am entertaining myself or those who are playing with me present right there, rather than trying to entertain someone else on the screen. I had fun with the spoiler playthrough that I did, but I don't know. It's a different feel, I think, when Vantage, is built around freedom and choice and doing what I want to do in that moment. That said, I had a lot of fun watching Paul Grogan's playthrough of Vantage. It was really fun to see him talk it through with the fellow players, to get feedback from other people. So I think there will be times where I do at least one live play of Vantage in the future where I take suggestions for other people. That will definitely be a very different experience for me, because it won't be about my choices and what I want to do. It'll be about what the crowd wants to do, but that's okay. Just a different experience. I probably will do it. Let's see. Chad says, have you showed what the add-on wooden skill tokens and the dual layered player mats look like yet? Chad, I have. It is in an update. Let's see if I can pull up that update while I'm talking to you right now. It was a few updates ago for Vantage. I will pull it up while I'm talking here. Which update was it in? I think it was in this one. Nope, not that one. A different update. Here we go. This should be it. Yeah, here we go. Here, I'll show them. I'll share my screen and I will show these to you. Okay. So here is what the metal coins in Vantage look like. They're a little smaller photo here. Here are what the wooden skill tokens look like. I don't know if you can entirely tell from this photo, but they're printed on both sides with the skill tokens. They're dual coded for colorblind friendliness. They're all a color and a unique icon. And then the player mats, here's all the player mats in a row. They are dual layered where there's this solid back layer. I know this photo is really small on your screen. And then a thinner top layer to keep the cards in place. The cards if you place the cards on the table, they don't have a problem staying in place. But because you are picking up and putting down dice and tokens from them quite a bit, they can shift in little ways. And so these player mats keep them in place really nicely. Yeah. Those are all the optional add-ons that will be available on July 9th for Vantage. Miles says, what are you most excited about for my cruise? I'm excited about a bunch of things, Miles. It's tough to pick one thing. The cruise will take us, or we'll start in England. We'll spend a few days in England, and then we'll be on a cruise, and then we'll spend some time during the cruise in Norway. You know, I think that, I don't know, I'm excited about it a lot, Miles. I'm excited to play games with a bunch of people that I normally don't get to play games with, kind of like Geekway, but in a much smaller size. I'm curious to be on a cruise ship for the first time. I've never done that before. I just watched a video about the cruise ship today, and there's a lot of stuff to do there. I think my focus on the cruise ship will mostly be eating and playing games, but I like both of those things a lot, so I'm looking forward to exploring those two things. And in Norway, I'm excited to eat local cuisine, to hopefully meet some local people when we stop off. And I'm also very curious and excited to navigate through the fjords. I think that will be something that I can't think of a comparison. That's something I haven't experienced before. Maybe the closest would be taking the ferry from the North Island of New Zealand to the South Island. I think this will be different from that too. So I'm very excited to go in the fjords in Norway. I'm also excited to see Stonehenge again. I've been to Stonehenge once, and it was honestly one of the best experiences of my life to go to Stonehenge. And so I really look forward to going back there. That's a small taste. Really, when I travel, I love the people, I love the food, and I love just kind of immersing myself in other cultures for a short amount of time. So I'm very excited about that. I know that isn't about the cruise specifically, but it's related to the cruise. Let's see. Jeff says, with such a large quantity of cards in Vantage, how many hours or plays have you had for playtesting? So me personally, I have playtested Vantage. I mean, easily hundreds of hours at this point, probably 100 plus plays. Not always full plays, but oftentimes like a playtest for Vantage for me was dropping into the world and playing for whatever time I had, like 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes that would be a complete game, sometimes not, just to continually look at the flow of the game, the challenge of the game, the writing in the game, making sure cards, all the 900 different cards that you can earn, that they felt unique and special, that they felt mechanically designed to pair with a theme. So yeah, and that's just me. For the other playtesters, I see Garrett in the comment here. I don't even know how many hours. I mean, there were so many different playtests. I asked for some reports of the playtest, but a lot of it was just people doing what I did and dropping in and playing for a little while, either solo or with other people, and sharing little things that they found along the way in a Discord server that we had set up for it. So probably thousands of plays, not always complete plays, but probably thousands of plays of Vantage before we went to print. And there will still, I will be transparent about this. There will still be errors in the game. I mean, it's essentially how many? 900 cards, 800 locations, 8 different storybooks, over 300,000 words of text. But fortunately, and most of the errors I think that have been found since all the oversight and proofreading process have been found by localization partners who are translating. And fortunately, so far, I think there's only like 1 or 2 that actually impact gameplay, and it's still pretty rare that you would find those errors because you have to find like a very specific storybook entry, and it might send you to the wrong card or something like that. And so I'll put them on the FAQ. I know this wasn't even your question, Jeff, but I'm talking about it anyway. So yeah, just to throw that out there. Joshua says, have I seen Pixar's Elio? I thought it was one of the strongest films in a while. It's a bummer that it's not doing well in theaters. New IP is always welcome from Pixar. I agree with all that, Joshua. I've not seen it yet, though, and I'm looking forward to seeing it soon. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and thanks for highlighting it. Some things that I've been watching recently, we've been watching a lot of The Devil's Plan Season 2 on Netflix, which is a battle of wits and skill style competition show that it uses a bunch of tabletop games that are similar to games that you and I may have played, but not exactly. They've designed them for the show specifically, and we're really enjoying it. The one catch is that every episode is between 80 minutes to 100 minutes, so almost 2 hours for some episodes. So it's a lot to take in, but it's a fantastic show if you love tabletop games. We also started watching Hacks. I don't know if we'll keep watching Hacks. It's funny, but it's partially about people being not very nice to each other, and I don't gravitate towards that style of show. But we're in season 4, so we've gotten this far. And we also, one of the topics in the hack here, 2 movies that we watched this past weekend. We watched called Deep Cover that I rather enjoyed. It was it's on Prime right now. It's about a group of improv comedians who take on an undercover cop role. It's a comedy. It's a scripted movie. And also the Lord of the Rings movie, the animated one that came out this past Christmas called The War of the Rohirrim. Really beautiful movie. I thought it was really well animated. Yeah, it was maybe a little slow, a little long, but overall I think it's worth watching if you like Lord of the Rings. Imagine Eric says, I see the listed playtime advantage is 120 through up to it's 2 to 3 hours. Does that mostly depend on player count or more the choices and events that emerge during gameplay? Combination of the two, Eric. I would say in a solo game or a 2-player game of Vantage, it's probably going to last around 45 minutes to maybe up to 90 minutes for the 2-player counts. So it will go higher, and then at other player counts, it will go up a little higher. But it also definitely depends on the choices that you make during gameplay. And one of the end game conditions in Vantage is just to say, we plan to play this for 2 hours. We've reached the 2-hour point. Let's see how much we accomplish during this time. That is a viable end game condition for Vantage. I put that longer playing time on the box. Originally, I actually put 60 to 120 minutes, 1 to 2 hours. But I upped it because I wanted to prepare people for what could be a longer experience. Because the game does not rush you. The game gives you the time to do what you want. There is pressure, there is tension, but it also gives you, the game is about freedom and freedom of choice. So I wanted players to prepare. I wanted to prepare players for what could be a longer experience. There's also on the mission card itself in Vantage. In every game, there's one of 21 different missions in the game. There are actions that you can take that can definitely accelerate the game. So if you want to accelerate your game of Vantage, take some of those actions. It's not cheating. It is a perfectly viable way to play, and it can just greatly accelerate the game and make it shorter. Chris says, do optional dual-layered player mats fit into the Vantage box? I know there's a lot of cards already stuffed in there. The Vantage box is very carefully crafted and organized, and the add-ons, the wooden skill tokens and the metal coins, they do fit into the box. They have little compartments where they fit into the box. The player mats also do fit into the box, but just yesterday I measured to let people know exactly how much lid lift there would be, and there's 12 millimeters of lid lift if you put the optional player mats in the box. Otherwise, you can actually just store them in the box they come in, which is 25 millimeters wide. So if you don't want lid lift, but you also don't want to take up much shelf space, you can put them on the shelf next to your box, and it won't take up that much more space. Let's see. Julio says, Vantage looks awesome. Your patience is respected. I see a lot of confusion and rude comments on Board Game Geek, and you walk through that with ease. Has this been different than other games? No, it's the same with any game. I think, yeah, I think people just have different ways of expressing themselves, and I appreciate any level of curiosity about Vantage or about our games. I can't pronounce this name. Turnskendency. How often are coins used in the game? Because most of the playthroughs do not utilize them. It depends. It depends on what you encounter throughout the game. But I will say that on your character card itself is an action that says buy. And so there is an action that you can take on your character card that involves coins. So in any given game, you could be using coins in Vantage. But it is true. You're right that in some of the playthroughs, coins are not used. Maybe even in all the playthroughs if you've watched all of them. So they are not always used, but they can be used in the game. Tim says, do the coins and tokens fit into those neat drawers in the box? Yeah, there are 3 little cardboard compartmonts in the box that you just pull out and put on the table when you are ready to set up and start playing. And they do fit into those compartments. That's what they're designed for. Gmoney14 says, has there been any discussion of a big box for Wyrmspan? My box is already pretty full with the upgraded components, and I would love to be able to fit the rubber playmats in a box. Rubber playmats are tough to fit into any box. I don't know if we'll, I guess we did design the Wingspan nesting box so they could fit. But as a result, the Wingspan nesting box is huge. I'm trying to avoid it for Wyrmspan, honestly, and Finspan, by offering inserts that let you fit a lot of stuff in the box. Let's talk about it after the Wyrmspan expansion comes out, and it's a good question for you to ask. But let's talk about it in a few months. One of my topics today was the Wyrmspan expansion because I teased the name of the expansion via a photo of the box. I teased that on Monday across social media, Discord, Blue Sky. I think Board Game Geek is the one place I didn't share it. It's on Instagram, it's on Facebook. And so if you are curious, it's called Wyrmspan Dragon Academy is the first expansion to Wyrmspan. I say first, not knowing if there will be future expansions. Currently, we don't have any on the progress chart, so we haven't at least announced any others, but currently, we just have one. I would say, went all in on this expansion. So it's a fairly robust expansion for Wyrmspan. So excited to release that later this year. Yeah. Arishi says, if you still like going to conventions that focus on gaming aspect as an attendee, that is very much what I like to do. FallCon 38 is happening August 22nd through 24th in Calgary, Alberta. Thank you for letting me know about that. I think this year it might be a little bit short notice to do that. I do appreciate the 2 months advance notice is nice as well. But I do have it on my list. I believe we talked about this before. Let's see. If I put it on my list of conventions. Here we go. Conventions to attend. FallCon in Calgary, late August. Yeah, I do have it on the list to consider in a future year. So I appreciate you highlighting that. Paul, I was just singing your praises for the playthrough that you hosted the other day. Thanks for popping in to say hi. I had a great time hanging out for much longer than I thought in that playthrough because it was so entertaining. Let's see. Just scrolling through, looking through for comments right now because I'm already, as usual, behind on comments a little bit. Odd Willow says, if we sleeve the Vantage cards, will they still fit in the box? The Vantage, please don't sleeve the Vantage cards. I appreciate you asking. I appreciate you wanting to protect the cards in Vantage, but they are never shuffled. It's a tight squeeze to fit them in the box. The box is designed to fit 1,300 cards, but not sleeved cards. The box would have to be nearly double that size to fit sleeved cards, which would significantly increase the price for the majority of people who don't sleeve cards. And especially in this game, you really, really do not need to sleeve the cards because you never shuffle them. So please don't sleeve the cards in Vantage. It's also a ton of plastic that you'd have to use to do that. Of course, I'm sure someone out there will decide to do so anyway. And if you do so, you'll have to find a custom solution to store all those cards. Aaron says, for Vantage, what was the most challenging aspect of the design and what was the solution you found? Assuming you had a solution, of course. I definitely encountered a lot of challenging things during the process of Vantage. Really, I mean, the most challenging aspect of designing Vantage was that whenever I made a change that impacted the entire system or the entire world, it would take me weeks or sometimes months to implement that change because there were 800 different locations and eventually 900 different cards that you can gain, non-location cards that you can gain. And so that was really daunting. I mean, it was even psychologically daunting to know sometimes that I was making a change that was right for the game, but that it would take so long to populate the entire world with that change. Yeah, that was the most challenging part of it, really, and one of the reasons the game took so long to make. Here we go. Garrett chimes in. He says, Garrett spent over 250 hours playtesting Vantage, and that doesn't include proofing and scripting and whatnot, which is another 150 or so. There were thousands of hours poured into it. Garrett, I'm eternally grateful for everything that you put into Vantage. You helped create this planet in so many different ways, and I really appreciate that. Robert has a very kind thing to say. He says, your kindness, empathy, determination, inclusiveness, and intelligence show through in your game publishing. Do you equate any of your personality with game design elements? That's an interesting question, Robert. I would say when I play games, I usually have two goals in mind. One, I am hoping that everyone at the table, including myself, but also including everyone else at the table, will have a good time. So I try really not to do something in the game that would prevent someone else at the table from having a good time. Also, when I play games, I don't know if that ties into game design elements. Actually, it does tie into game design elements because you'll rarely see something in a Stonemaier game that directly hurts another player, that allows someone to target another player and directly hurt them. Two is that I like to experiment when I play games. I don't like to always seek out the optimal thing. I like to seek out the interesting thing, the path not taken. And that is shown, I think, in many of our games, that there are multiple paths to victory. Ways that you can have fun, potentially have fun building something in the game, even if it is not a successful winning strategy in the game. Might be, but not always. And in Vantage in particular, Vantage is, it's a game about intrinsic motivations, but giving you the freedom to choose what to do and how to do it. And I've had a blast. That I think is very reflective of my gaming personality, or my personality in general. Adwillow says, is it possible to lay the cards for Vantage out into a giant map just for the fun of it? It is kind of possible to do that, but the location cards are big cards. They were expensive to print and tight to fit in the box. And so we printed them double-sided. You're only ever looking at one location at a time. Your location card is kind of wedged into a holder in front of you, so only you can see it. And so even though there are 800 different locations that you could spread out into a giant map, you would need two sets of them to do so. So if you have Vantage and a friend has a copy, you could combine all the cards and all the location cards because you need both sides of the cards to form a giant, I wouldn't say map, but a view of the world from above. That is possible. Paul says, thanks for putting up to 3 hours on the box for Vantage. And even that, honestly, there might be some games of Vantage. In fact, I know there are some games of Vantage that have already been played that have gone over 3 hours. I just want to prepare people for a longer playing time. Putting the playing time on the box is always a struggle. It's always, how do we calculate what people will actually do when they play the game? Paul, I know it's a challenge. So yeah, I just wanted to set expectations as clearly as possible for a game of Vantage. Hilda says, I always love the recommendations this group gives on chats. We've been watching The Day of the Jackal with Eddie Redmayne and reading Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. Enjoying both. Oh, thanks for sharing your reading recommendations too, Hilda. I always appreciate what you recommend. I'm reading right now. I'm still reading Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky, but I have a few books coming up on my list, including Heir of Storms, another Adrian Tchaikovsky book about bees in space, of all places. Not based on apiary, but maybe it's a wink towards apiary. What are the other books that I recently got? A romantic comedy called The Lodge was one. There's one other one that I'm forgetting as well. Oh, it's the fourth book of the Lady Astronaut series. I recently learned that there was a fourth book, so I got that one. So what are you all reading and watching right now? Anything good? Anything that you'd recommend? I also have a question of the day. Why don't I throw this out here before I get too far into the chat, and then I'll get to Dan's comment. My question of the day, I talked a second ago about how in most Stonemaier games, there's not direct conflict. There's not ways to directly hurt someone. That means there's also rarely combat in our games. But There is combat in a lot of games, and I think sometimes it's nice to give players the option to do something combat-like, not the only option, but an option. And so I'd like to hear, over the last few years, what game that you've played do you think has had a combat system that you really enjoyed, or that was really unique? Really unique, really innovative, or that you really enjoyed, or a combination of the three. Let me know about that in the comments below. Dan says that he actually just returned from a cruise to Norway, and it was beautiful. Do you know where you're stopping at? We do know, Dan. Olden, is Olden on the list? Like Haugesund, I think Olden, Ålesund, and one other place that I'm forgetting. Dan says Olden was the most beautiful place. I think we are also stopping in Olden, so I'm excited about that. Megan is confirming that. Joshua says, have you ever found that the time in the box scares potential purchases away? I wonder if listing 0 to 180 minutes would be better or worse, or if there's an entirely new way to explain playtime. One of the ways I think, Joshua, that some publishers do it, and I don't know if we've ever done this with Stonemaier Games, but to list playing time by player count, to say like 30 minutes per player. I think that is viable to do, but at a quick glance, I have found that if I see a little icon of a player and I see 30 minutes like per icon, sometimes I think that's a 30-minute game, rather than it being like, a 3-hour game if you're playing with 6 players, just at a glance. And so I think playing time can scare people away. I think that's fine, but I think that's okay. If someone is worried, if someone cannot get a 3-hour game to the table, they might not want to play Vantage unless they're playing solo or 2-player, and then they're not going to get up to a 3-hour playing time. Maybe I could communicate that better on the box. There certainly is more descriptive ways of communicating that on the box, but at a quick glance and using common metrics like on Board Game Geek, I think it's tough to do. Arishi says that Falcon has 3 play and win games from Stonemaier Games. Indeed, that was me sending those games to Falcon. Yeah, I personally handle all of the play and win games that we send out to various conventions. So if you ever see a play and win Stonemaier game at a convention, there's a 99% chance that I sent it to them, or I had our fulfillment center send it to them. There's a 1% chance that maybe that convention bought the game, which I do appreciate when conventions do that. If a convention wants a specific game in play and win, they can buy the game for their attendees. I think it will get more than that, whatever they paid for it. It'll definitely get that value of play from a convention, especially if it's a hot game that they want to share at the convention. The Infinite Dude says, I played Robinson Crusoe for the first time after totally tabled compared it with Vantage. They both tell a story with the playthrough, unlike campaigns. Sad I put it off. It's great. I could see that comparison. I've played both, of course, and I do see them as very different games. Like Robinson Crusoe is a tight survival game. Vantage is not a tight survival game. There is a survival element. You can lose by running out of time, morale, or health, but very different, I would say, mechanically in that survival feel than Robinson Crusoe. But the comparison of them being not campaign games, I think, is definitely accurate. Let's see. Chunky says, I've watched all the Vantage reviews with great interest, and it looks really interesting. You have previously stated that you want people to experience it on the tabletop first and not online as a first experience. Definitely true. I'm curious about a helper app for the game. I think that'd be a great time and maybe even money saver. I appreciate you mentioning that. I'm going to drop it down in the comments so I can see my face. I'm not interested in an app for Vantage. We are, of course, prepared to make a web app available sometime in the future for the storybooks, but probably not. I mean, I think Vantage, the immersion of Vantage, I think is best played when you don't have screens involved. When the screens are off, when you're playing Vantage. The storybooks are not hard to use. It's easy to grab the right one. It's easy to find the right entry. I would say it takes maybe a second or two longer than it would take to type into that information into an app. Given that the storybooks are such a key part of the experience, they're in the game no matter what. So it doesn't save us money to not put the storybooks to add a web app. And really, I don't think that adding a screen to Vantage, I think it hurts the game, honestly. And I say that as someone who playtested Vantage primarily digitally and had a perfectly fine time with it. I had fun playtesting Vantage digitally. using Google Sheets essentially as the storybooks. Very easy to find the entry on the Google Sheets, but with a screen, it turns on a different part of our brain when there's a screen involved. I have nothing against web apps and games, but I truly think Vantage is best played without the screen. And so, yeah, it's not, we are prepared to do it, but it's not something we plan to do for quite some time. Let's see. Chris says when you're rolling the 2 skill dice to determine what the mission is, you're told that you can re-roll pairs because they're more difficult. Those are at the top of the missions. Or the rest of the missions sorted by difficulty, or is it just 2 sections, harder and not as hard? That's exactly right. It's harder, not as hard. So there are 6 missions that are a little bit more difficult, sometimes even more lengthy than the easier missions in the game. I would say in general they're more lengthy. And so I paired them with the less likely die roll, which is to get a pair. And this is determined for all players once at the beginning of the game. And then all the other missions are variable in their difficulty. They're just less difficult, but variable. That it's not sorted by any. It's not sorted after that. Andrea says, have you read any great books lately? I'm on book 3 of Dungeon Crawler Carl, and it's absolutely amazing. Highly recommend. Thank you for that recommendation, Andrea. I'm technically in the middle of book 3 of Dungeon Crawler Carl. I paused for a little while to read some other books that I was excited about, but I'm glad you're really enjoying it. I am still reading Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky and really enjoying that. It's actually not entirely unlike Vantage. It's about some people who crash land on a planet and discover what that planet's all about. Let's see. Helen says, if players complete their missions, just one mission for all players and or a destiny, can you still carry on playing if you so wish? My impression is yes. Yes, but if you on the destiny cards, they say if you I can't remember exactly what the wording is, but like if you officially complete this mission and read the entry in the storybook for that destiny, I'm sorry, not mission, destiny, then the game will end. But if you don't, you can complete the destiny and just not read the corresponding storybook entry yet. That is perfectly fine, and you can continue to play Vantage by doing that. But if you read that entry, the game will instruct you to end the game. Mark says, does Vantage have a twin, a game that you also designed concurrently all these years but kept it a secret? I designed a bunch of games while I was designing Vantage, Mark. I think Red Rising, Smitten, Tapestry, I think it's no Tapestry. Yeah, Tapestry. I think was maybe Tapestry was overlapping just a little bit. Expeditions, Rolling Realms. I basically designed a bunch of published games since Vantage actually came out. I was always kind of working on a side project while also working on Vantage. Odd Willow says, will anything be bringing you to the Milwaukee area anytime soon? Not anytime soon, no. I have been to that area and I need to revisit. So there's a good reason to come to Milwaukee sometime. Let me know. Maybe I'll visit up there. It would probably be nice in this heat in St. Louis to get out of the heat a little bit. Jeff says, have you ever attended any of the PAX conventions? I have not, Jeff. Jeff and his eldest are going to PAX West in Seattle this fall, and I was interested in any feedback. So if anyone has attended PAX West and has any feedback for Jeff, feel free to share it in the comments here. Another Jeff says, can you give us another reveal or gameplay mechanism on the Wyrmspan expansion? So far, I've just revealed what the box looks like and what the name of it is, Wyrmspan Dragon Academy. But you can maybe infer something about the mechanisms from that name, Dragon Academy. Let's see. Tinkler says, after Wes Anderson's The Phoenician Scheme, there was a discussion about how every film of his is more abstractly, more extremely Anderson-y. Is that true for games? Is each game more Jamey-y? I don't know. That's a good question. There might be designers where that is the case, but I think that if a designer has been designing for a decade or so, as I have, there are certainly some common elements. We have the tenets of game design at Stonemaier Games, for example. But do they get more tenety? I don't know about that. And I think if you're designing games for that long, that you don't want to do the same thing over and over. You want to experiment, or at least I do. And so some of those experiments work, some of them don't. I think my top ranked games, at least, are some of the earliest games that I designed. Viticulture and Scythe are still ranked higher than anything that I've designed since then. So that might say something as well. Maybe I've gotten worse as a designer as I try to experiment more and more. Ian says, will there be a version of Vantage that includes updated components? No, there's just one version of Vantage, and there's 3 optional add-ons that you can add optionally, and they will fit in the box. As I mentioned a little bit, if you add the player mats, they add a little bit of lid lift to the box, just over 1 centimeter. See another question about a helper app for Vantage. The game doesn't need a helper app. It has the storybooks there. It's very easy to look up the entries in the storybook, and adding a screen to the game, I feel and I know from playtesting that it breaks the immersion of playing Vantage. Paul says, watched your video with you playing disc golf with the YouTube guys. Now I'm hooked. How did it take so long to try this? You're hooked on disc golf. That's awesome, Paul. Yeah, I think, honestly, I think if you're watching this and you consider yourself a tabletop gamer, I really do recommend disc golf. It does involve dexterity, but it's essentially a big outside dexterity game. There's no player interaction. You just get to try to throw in the disc into the basket as quickly as possible, or as in few shots as possible. And Paul, yeah, I'm really glad you're enjoying it. Chad says, would you agree with the Vantage 2.6 weight on BGG? I'd bump it up a little bit higher, maybe 2.8, maybe closer to 3. I mean, there's 900 different cards that you could add to your grid. So there's a lot of combinations of mechanisms, even though the core system itself, I think, is very streamlined. Let's see. I see some suggestions for what people are reading here. I always appreciate those. Check out the comments if you're looking for reading suggestions. Jay Zargo says, are there any fan spans or places to find or share them? I feel like there could be a perfect exercise in game design for new designers. There are some every now and then. I think there's like a few Pokemon versions of Wyrmspan on Board Gamer Geek. I think that's the typical place to post those types of things. Typically, though, they tend to be just complete reskins. They're not actually adding new mechanisms to the game. I think that's more of a challenge. I think the perfect exercise in game design for new designers is to design a realm of rolling realms. Take a game you love and distill what makes that game special down to a single card of instructions and graphics using the rolling realm system. It's something that I suggest to new game designers. I suggest it to classrooms who want a game design challenge. Yeah, I think that's a great new game design challenge. There you go. Joshua says that he loves the Dead Reckoning combat system. I'll write that one down. That is a really fun combat system in Dead Reckoning. I'll have to look at the last time I did a combat video. I wonder if Dead Reckoning got a mention in it. MD Rev says, just a nice comment here. I appreciate Stonemeier's approach to game releases and how you approach operations as a business. I'm thrilled to be able to be a champion. Thank you so much for being a Stonemaier champion. I really appreciate that. For those of you who don't know, a champion is someone who pays, I think it's around $15 a year to support the videos and written content that I create for Stonemaier Games. And you get 20% discount on anything that you buy from our web store during the 12-month period after you become a champion. You can become a champion, like even as you're buying something, you can put the champion membership in the cart, and that discount will apply to the thing that you put in the cart. And whenever we do a launch, which I think MD Rev is also referring to, whenever we do a launch, we are ready to ship that product. And champions for the launch will get their products shipped first within each region before we ship them to other customers. So yeah, thank you so much for being a champion. I really appreciate that. Garrett mentioned ARC's combat system. I also think that is a really interesting one where only one player is rolling dice in the ARC system, and both players are kind of the results impact both players, even though only one player is rolling the dice. I see Root, Wonderland's War. That's a fun one because other players can bet on the combat essentially in Wonderland's War. JS says, is it safe to assume Vantage will be below $80 USD? That's a fair question. I haven't released the price for Vantage yet. We'll announce that on the July 9th launch. But I would ask you to keep in mind that Vantage is a game. It's a tapestry size box. It has 32 custom dice, a bunch of wooden tokens, and 1,300 1,300 cards with over 1,600 unique illustrations. It is not a cheap game. It was not a cheap game to create. It was not a cheap game to manufacture. So all I've said about the price so far is that it will not be our most expensive game. And our most expensive game is the Expeditions Ironclad Edition, which I think was around $135. Vantage will be less than $135. But you'll see the exact price on July 9th. Yeah. I see a Mistborn mentioned for combat. I do really like the Mistborn combat system that uses the King of Tokyo system essentially for combat. Endeavor, there's an extra cost for the attacker, and the person being attacked doesn't lose the token. This must be the original Endeavor. Endeavor Deep Sea, I don't think has combat at all. Austin says, are there plans for Vantage to be made into a digital game? A rough timeline for that? No, Austin, I think I want people to explore Vantage on the tabletop. So there's no plans for a digital version of Vantage. Really, Vantage was inspired heavily by open world digital games. And so perhaps someday Vantage will get a full digital release. But there's also, if you enjoy the freedom of exploring Vantage in an open world format, there are some great existing video games that you could play instead. Helen says that they're enjoying the 2d6 dungeon combat system. 2d6 dungeon? I'll have to check that out. I am not familiar with that system. Just to clarify this, someone says, I know you said no expansions for Vantage. That's true. Vantage is a complete self-enclosed system. There will not be expansions for it. Their idea is a single location card, the North Pole, so people stop posting threads about BGG on the planet being a Taurus. Yeah, Vantage is, it is a sphere for reasons that you can discover in the game. I think the confusion about it is that in Vantage, you are always facing north. You can see like hints of what is to the east and west. And if necessary, the description on the card gives you hints at what's to the south of you because you can't see that. But you're always facing north. And I think the confusion that people are having is, well, if you're always facing north, what happens when you, like on Earth, if I move north and I get to the North Pole and then I keep going forward, then I'm going south from then on, which is true. But from my perspective as someone who is walking around St. Louis, for example, if I'm walking north, I don't have any, like say I even got to the North Pole and I kept going, I probably wouldn't even know I was at the North Pole. I would just feel like I'm still walking north. So it's like forward, right, back, left. But I think the cardinal directions north, east, south, west, I think that is more intuitive, especially if you are talking to other players who are in other parts of the world. However, I think part of the confusion came from the idea that maybe if everyone went north, you'd end up in the same place. If you kept going north and north and north, you'd end up at the same place. That is not a thing in Vantage. You can find other players, but not based on purely going in one cardinal direction. Chad says he likes combating games that have a respawn effect. Robot Quest Arena does have that. I do like that about Robot Quest Arena, the respawn ability. Thank you for these. So my question today was about combat systems from games over the last few years that you have really enjoyed. Andrea mentions Roth, the new chip theory game, as a really simple and elegant way of allowing combat through a dice drafting mechanism and asymmetric abilities. It's lighter, but has fun strategy challenges. I have not played that one. I've seen, I think it's on the hot list right now. Andrea, thank you for sharing that one. I'm excited to try to play that one. Infinite Dude likes the Star Wars Unlimited combat mechanism. The innovation for me is turns overlap. So you take an action, I take an action. I'm used to Magic the Gathering with minutes of downtime. I'll have to look at it's been a while since I played Star Wars Unlimited, so I'll have to refresh myself on the exact combat mechanism in that game. Justin likes the Dune Imperium system. I really do like that one too. This kind of arena that everyone's entering optionally, and it happens at the end of the round. Dune Imperium, good pick there. Paul says, are we considering using Foreteller for dialogue audio? Again, Foreteller would use a digital app. I'm looking to have people turn off screens when they're playing Vantage and just immerse themselves in the analog experience. And most of the text is like 1 to 2 sentences. So I don't think Foreteller, I think it's a great audio option for games with longer story text. I don't know if it adds as much to games with 1 to 2 sentences of text. I think, yeah, that's my opinion. Julio mentions Root, Scythe, and Tapestry for combat as well. Yeah, I will have to mention some of I often forget that Tapestry has combat, but it does have combat in it. Jose says, can I do a game library tour video or personal game library? Sometimes, good question. I would have to use my phone to do it, which I could do. But every now and then on Instagram at Jamey Stonemaier, I do post photos of my shelves. I have a Calyx over here. I have a shorter, lighter games shelf. I have a shelf of opportunity, and I have a Stonemaier Games shelf. So every now and then I'll show those on Instagram. I try to do that once or twice a year. Sam says, when can we pre-order Vantage? Vantage actually, it won't be available for pre-order. It's just available for everyone to order for the first time on July 9th, and that's when it's ready to ship as well. So you can sign up for a launch notification on our website right now if you'd like, and I'll let you know on July 9th when it's ready for you to go order. Mark says that they're excited to play Vantage. Did your experience with Vantage designing a co-op inspire any ideas for another co-op game? Good question, Mark. I currently am not working on another co-op game. Vantage I put a lot, I put a lot of thought, put a lot of ideas into the co-op system in Vantage. So no, I'm not currently working on one. Smitten, which is on the wall behind me, Smitten is another co-op game that I designed while designing Vantage. It's a 1 to 2 player, just a light 18-card cooperative game. I have had ideas for other cooperative games, but none that I'm actively working on that I can think of right now. Chad says, what do you say is the hardest and easiest resources to replenish in Vantage? I don't know about easiest, but I can say that time is the most difficult. So the 3 things in Vantage that you can run out of and potentially end the game are time, health, and morale. And time we can't really get back, right? Every second that passes is a moment that we can't get back. But whereas health, we can, in real life, we can improve our health. We can improve our morale, hopefully. But time keeps moving forward. So time is definitely the most difficult to get back, if not almost impossible. Jay Zargo says, is Vantage different mechanisms world size than what you planned when you started 8 years ago? Oh, it's very different. Yeah, it evolved quite a bit in many different ways over that time. Yeah, check out the design diaries if you're curious about that, but I talk about a lot of the ways that Vantage changed. It is the core idea of being on a different location than other players and having that idea where you're looking at something that other players can't see. That happened very early on, but even that wasn't there at the very beginning. At the very beginning, it was a first-person perspective game where players shared the same location. So at the very, very earliest, but quickly that changed. Once that changed, I kind of realized what I wanted Vantage to be, and then I realized also how big it had to be for that to work well. Next says, are there any design diaries for Vantage? There are. Yeah, I've been doing them since April of 2024. So if you go to the main Vantage page of our website, you can see a lot of stories and photos of how Vantage evolved over the years and different things that I've shared about it. I would start from the beginning and go up to the present to learn about how those stories went. Pete says, any update on your search for a small game to publish? Yeah, we've been actively looking for a game that is small, light, scales well up to higher player counts, that you can teach the rules just by looking at the back of the box, that style of game, probably a cooperative game. And we're still searching. We have some candidates, but we're still searching for that game. Let's see. Ivan says, I've noticed that there are a lot of unlicensed copies of famous board games on Temu, like Brass, Terraforming Mars, and Wyrmspan Oceania. Do you think this is a response to the recent high tariffs? Maybe Chinese manufacturers trying to stay in business. What are your thoughts? Yeah, these are, I think, often just outright counterfeits on Temu. Almost always. So I don't recommend buying anything on Temu. And I actually think, as much as I don't like the tariffs, I think the loopholes that they closed for companies like Temu are really good. So yeah, they're counterfeits of games, unfortunately. And if you do see them, I recommend that you report them. Let's see here. Arishi says, have I seen The Hobby, Tales from the Tabletop documentary yet? If yes, what did you think of it? I've not seen it yet, no. I don't know if it's out in St. Louis yet, but I do look forward to watching it. Has anyone else seen it? I mean, what did you think? Did you think it was a good representation of what you know The Hobby to be? Okay. Joshua says, have you revealed the Vantage Rolling Realm yet? And if not, when do you plan to do so? The next Vantage update should be on July 7th. And it will be revealed in that update. Paul says, talking about combat, the Street Fighter miniatures game. To recreate the combat system of the video game, each card has a colored circle on the left and right. Let's say if you played a card with a blue circle on the right card, if you have a card with a blue circle on the left card, you can play it for free. Oh, yeah, I liked how that That is in The Witcher as well. I need to mention The Witcher. The Witcher Old World, I believe, has that. That's a neat cascading combo system or linking combat system. Chat says, how close to your initial concept of the game still holds true? What initial concepts have you had to cut? Yeah, I talked a second ago about some of those initial concepts that changed over time. What's something that I cut? I mean, for a long time, I debated whether or not it would be a campaign game. So that was a long debate for me to decide if that was right or not for the game. There were times where each action had its own unique system that you would understand. And I realized that was not good for the game either. That really got in the way of the game. So I wouldn't say I ever had to cut those things. I would say it's good that I didn't pursue those things. I don't think they were right for the game. Ian mentions combat in Marvel Champions. It's been a while since I played that one. I need to refresh myself on that. TJ Hoffer mentions Unmatched. That does have a great combat system. I agree. Oh, the other question I have for you today is about anticipation. Are you? I know we only have a few minutes left, but what are you anticipating right now in terms of games related to tabletop games? Hopefully Vantage might be on that list for some of you, but I guess beyond Vantage, what else are you anticipating? James says, will Vantage have a wider international release after Gen Con? It will, James. Yeah. I mean, initially, even upon launch, it will be an international launch. We have fulfillment centers in the US, Canada, Australia, and in Europe. So the initial launch from the Stonemaier Games web store will be international. And then usually around 6 to 8 weeks later, we have our worldwide English retail release. Maxwell says, has the Wyrmspan expansion been shown off already? I did share a photo of it on Discord, Blue Sky, Instagram, and the Wyrmspan Facebook group. I showed a photo of the box of the Wyrmspan expansion. That's all I've revealed, the box and the name, which is Wyrmspan Dragon Academy, which is coming later this year. James also asked, how soon after Gen Con? Kind of same answer, James. It's more so 6 to 8 weeks after July 9th, after our launch. And we do plan on having copies of Vantage at Gen Con as well. Let's see. Oh, the push your luck system in Trudvang Legends. I've heard good things about that. Maybe a bag building system. Trudvang Legends. Make a note about that one. I also saw Andromeda's Edge mentioned earlier too. Oh, Keith. Thank you, Keith, for saying that. Keith is excited. Another publisher excited to try Vantage. These types of games are huge projects and a fantastic achievement. They are huge. Yeah, it's. I think you know this from Role Player Adventures, how much work and time you put into that. Aaron also speaks highly of Roth and Neon Rain. Mike says, what's my favorite sports-based game? Yeah, I'm not really, Mike, I must say, I enjoy watching sports and playing sports. It's very rare that I want to play a sports game on the tabletop. Very, very rare. I would say racing games are the closest thing. In fact, racing is something that I'm not generally interested in real life. Like I don't watch car racing, but I'll play Downforce at any time. So I don't know if I really have a top 10 for that, for sports-themed games. Ian says, will Vantage be undiced? It will not be undiced. And the reason for that is, and also the reason why there isn't a preset tutorial for Vantage is that it's about freedom of, the game is about freedom, like choosing to do what you want to do and how you want to do it. And so having a tutorial that walks you through anything that's pre-scripted doesn't really work for Vantage. Considered it, but decided against it. Even more suggestions for combat here. I'm getting a lot. Paul mentioned Small World. That is a good one. And then Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage. The players use battle cards that have different army maneuvers that need to be canceled by the other player. That's a neat system. I haven't played that one. James says, is there an overarching storyline to be discovered in Vantage? There is a lot to discover in Vantage, including, I would say, maybe not a story, but lore. Both about, yeah, there's lore to discover that you can pick up pieces of it every time you play. That's some of it forms a cohesive story, but it's not a narrative. It's definitely not there's no linear narrative in Vantage. I would say lore is the better word. There are some storylines that you can follow, but you kind of have to find them. Yeah, in fact, like anything in Vantage, you have to go find it. Frank says, one thing I loved in the City of Kings was how combat was fully deterministic by default. The players could spec into randomness if they preferred letting them play the style. That's impressive, Frank. Yeah, I must admit, I've still never played the City of Kings, but I like that option that players can make combat more random if they want it to be more random. That's pretty cool. Patrick mentions Warrior Knights has an interesting combat system where you can inflict casualties versus winning a victory. Oh, that's interesting. I'll have to make a note of that. Warrior Knights. Yeah, thank you. There's so many interesting questions here. Kevin says, what design was more difficult for you, Charterstone or Vantage? Vantage was more daunting and took longer. Charterstone was more mentally taxing, I would say, because for Charterstone, whenever I made a decision that affected the branches in Charterstone, it's a campaign game. So choices have a branching impact, an exponential impact when you make a change in Vantage, in Charterstone, not Vantage. So it was brain burning to think, okay, I've changed this one thing. How many other things does this impact? That was really tough for Charterstone. For Vantage, it was more an aspect of, if I change this one thing, or if I add this one thing, I have to add it throughout the entire world. That is a big effort to do. So it was more daunting in that way. Challenging in different ways, I would say. Aaron says, so now that Vantage is releasing soon, what is the next game to fill that 8-year development cycle void that will be created? I am hoping not to work on a game for 8 years again. That is a long time to work on a game, and it took a lot of budget. It took a lot of money to create 1,600 unique illustrations all that time. Yeah, so hoping to not do that again in the future, Aaron. Paul says, I know you don't develop any meme games, or I try not to do meme games or games that take that, but do you enjoy playing them? Sometimes, like if it's not directed meanness, there's very few games I think with directed meanness that I actually enjoy. But for example, I love the game Skull, and Skull is kind of a meme game, but you're not really picking on any individual player in Skull. You're almost picking on yourself in Skull when you play that. I'm trying to think if there is a take that game on my shelf over here. I mean, maybe the exception is 2-player games. When I'm dueling with someone, it's all fair game. Like I'm definitely going after the player in a dueling game. David mentions the show Jet Lag. I have not watched Jet Lag much. I've watched a little bit of the Japan one, but I've heard great things about it, and I need to watch more of it. Yeah, thank you for that recommendation. I did recently film a video about my top 10 favorite competition shows, and I mentioned Jet Lag on it as one that I want to watch more of. Chad says, how hard was it to design the 6 location action icons? He said they're loaded with meaning, even if they're just lines. They were a collaboration with I think Valentina, the first artist for Vantage. There were 3: Valentina, Sora, and Emilian. I don't know if it was hard. It was just a thing that we did. Yeah. Chad says, can you reveal the Innova disc mold that you'll be using for Vantage? We do. We're revealing the disc golf disc for Vantage on July 7th as well. What was the mold for it? I actually can't remember. If Miles is still watching, Miles might know it offhand, but I can't remember it offhand. Nate says, are you involved in Panda's effort to expand manufacturing to South America? We are. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Panda is our manufacturer. We're here to work with them and to partner with them. And part of that partnership includes a facility that they are partnering with in Brazil. I see some anticipation here about various games. Thank you all for sharing those. I see these. I'm not going to read them all, but I see Vantage on many of the lists, which I appreciate. Rick mentions the fan packs for Wyrmspan, which we are still actively working on. And yeah, that's we're getting close to going to print on those. I'm going to make a note about that because you reminded me of something I need to do with those fan packs today. Let's see. I've seen lots of things that people are anticipating. Oddwill asks if there are Easter eggs in Vantage. There are many, many Easter eggs in Vantage. Absolutely. And sorry, I'm almost out of time here, but let's see. Maxwell mentions Combat Commander has a neat combat system. The part that is relevant to you is that the dice rolls are done with cards, and some of the die rolls trigger events to represent the chaos of war. Maybe it's the sniper, medic, or hero reveals himself, or something else unexpected. A single unit with good stats. That's cool. Yeah, I haven't played that one, Maxwell, but I appreciate you highlighting that one. I will check it out. Joshua says, what does that mean? What does that do for them or Stonemaier Games? It just helps Panda diversify their supply chain, basically. Panda's really good at making games in China. Panda is a Canadian company. They have their main facility in China. They're really good at making games in China, but they realize that there's a lot they can also do in Brazil. And so I think generally, I think it's good to have a diverse supply chain, gives you some options. And we're working with them we're kind of dipping our toes into those waters. We're sending aspects of games to that facility in Brazil to try to make there as well. You probably won't see a difference at all, except on some of our games you might see made in Brazil on the box instead of made in China. I think that's it for today. I'm excited today because I'm going to go see some coworkers for lunch, including a coworker that I haven't seen in a long, long time. We work remotely across the US. And looks like I didn't even cover all my topics. I was going to mention that I played Night of the Ninja and Comic Hunters recently, really enjoyed them. But yeah, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate your time, your insights, your questions, and I hope you have a great week. All right, take care. Bye.